Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. That's audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Jeffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health, and really without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. That's betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a special edition of Nerdery and Murdery, Just the Nerdery, with a special guest star, K3!
Yay! It's me!
Excellent. Today we're going to do Just a Nerdery since we're on hiatus. Figured this way it'll give our people something to watch for the next couple of months. So we're just going to do a little nerdery. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've already got an episode planned for Nerdery.
What? Awesome.
I know.
So today we're going to talk about Joe Bob Briggs. You familiar with Joe Bob Briggs at all?
You've been watching it on the couch for the past couple of nights, so yeah.
It is pretty awesome. So Joe Bob Briggs basically talks about exploitation films. An exploitation film is a film that tries to succeed financially by exploiting current trends, niche genres, or lurid content. Exploitation films are generally low-quality B-movies, though some set trends, attracting critical attention, becoming historically important, and even gaining a cult following.
Like The Room.
Like The Room, exactly. Just like The Room. A drive-in theater or a drive-in cinema is a form of cinema structured consisting of a large outdoor movie screen or projection booth and concession stand. Large parking area for automobiles. Within the enclosed area, customers can view movies from the privacy and comfort of their cars. Some drive-ins have small playgrounds for children and a few picnic tables. or benches. The screen can be as simple as a painted white wall, or it can be a steel truss structure with a complex finish. Originally, the movie sound was provided by speakers on the screen and later by individual speakers hung from the windows of each car, which was attached to a small pole by a wire. These speaker systems were supposed to be the more practical method of micro broadcasting the soundtrack to car radios. They also had the advantage of the film soundtrack to be heard in stereo on car stereo systems, which are typically of much higher quality and fidelity than the basic small mono speakers used in the old systems. The reason I mentioned those two things, exploitation films have been a drive-in staple since the 1950s, helped by relatively limiting oversight compared to downtown theaters. By the 1970s, several venues switched from Showtime family-friendly fare to R-rated or X-rated films as a way to offset declining patronage and revenues, while other venues that still catered to families began to show R-rated or pornographic movies in late-night time slots to bring in extra income. This allowed censored material to be viewed by a wider audience, including those for whom a viewing was still illegal in some states, and it was also reliant upon varying local ordinances controlling such material. It also required a relatively remote location away from the heavier populated areas of towns and cities. Overall, drive-in theaters were getting mainly B movies or low-rated films from the movie industry. What is more, while movie rental fees were increasing, the film industry was also expecting drive-in theaters to maintain a prolonged time to run the shows. A combination of these factors was created difficulties for the drive-ins to compete with growing indoor cinemas. The runaway inflation and real estate interest rate hikes of the late 70s and the early 80s made the large land tracts used by drive-ins increasingly expensive and thus far too valuable for continued use in drive-ins. Many drive-ins operated solely on weekends, while some were open only during the spring and summer months. They were also subject to the whim of nature, as adverse weather often resulted in poor attendance or cancellation. By the late 1980s, the total number of drive-ins is still operated in the U.S. and Canada fell to less than 200. Now, with all of that information, which is a lot, I wanted to say that the reason we talked about exploitation films and drive-ins first was because we are talking about Joe Bob Briggs. Joe Bob Briggs is the drive-in movie critic. He's been doing this for, his first article was in the Dallas Times Herald in 1982. His name is not Joe Bob Briggs. His name is actually John Bloom. Joe Bob Briggs is an invention of his, because the idea was he would go out to the drive-ins on the weekends and watch these movies, and he noticed that no one was reviewing them. Like, because they were exploitation films, the reviewers were kind of snobby about it, and he thought that was wrong. So he invented this character, Joe Bob Briggs, who liked to go out to the drive-ins and watch these movies.
It's almost like a Southern man version of Elvira.
Exactly. That was his idea. Originally, he wanted him to be like a generic human. So his original idea was a guy called Bubba Rodriguez, because you weren't really sure where he was from or who he was. And his editor at the time was like, yeah, don't do that. Think of the whitest name you can. He's like, Joe Bob Briggs? He's like, yeah, that'll work. So that was it. And he started doing these columns in the Dallas Morning News. Well, it picked up kind of a following here in DFW. The Dallas Observer ran it. It became syndicated. And eventually, the Dallas Morning News started getting rid of staff, and he was one of the people they got rid of. So what? Yeah, it was about 1986, right? Well, in 1986, the Movie Channel, which is a premium pay site like HBO, Showtime, the Movie Channel, Stars, like that, the Movie Channel, their whole thing originally was they were just going to show movies. They weren't going to do shows. They weren't going to show boxing. They were just going to show movies. So they bought the rights to show a whole bunch of movies. Well, when they bought them, they bought 100, 200 movies that they wanted. But when they bought them, they had to buy them in a lot. So they had these other 400 or 500 pictures that were basically B movies, and they bought them from the distributors. So their idea was, well, since we bought them, we have the rights to show them. We're going to do like a B movie night. And it was about this time that Joe Bob Briggs lost his gig at the
Dallas Observer.
Dallas Times Herald. He was still running he ran his column in the Dallas Observer. I think his column still runs in the Dallas Observer. But yeah, so the movie channel he gave him a book of the movies that he could use, and he programmed them. And the name of the show was Joe Bob's Drive-In Theater, and it ran from 1986 to 1996.
10 years.
Yeah, and then oh my God, yeah, he did. I want to say, and he did it every week, but he filmed it from here at DFW. In 1996, the movie channel decided to basically cancel his show and go in another direction. They wanted to be more like HBO or Showtime. Yeah, exactly. But that was okay because TNT had been running, which was a basic cable show, had been running a B movie night for mostly horror called Monster Vision, right? Originally, it was just they had a voiceover that announced it, but they wanted like a horror host kind of thing. So they got Penn and Teller for about a year.
Penn and Teller for a horror movie?
Yeah, yeah, they were pretty good, but they didn't quite dial it in. So in 1996, when Joe Bob Briggs left or was fired from the movie channel, TNT was like, hey, you want to host Monster Vision? He's like, fine, but I want to do it just like my old show, which is what he did. So he did Monster Vision from 1996 to early 2000. Then TNT decided to change the format and called it Hollywood Movie Night and moved him from the DFW area out to California and completely changed the show. This lasted 3-4 months, and eventually they just stopped doing it. They didn't. Yeah, they didn't tell Joe Bob that they were. They didn't tell John Bloom that they were going to do that. Like, he didn't know. He just got a letter in the mail said, we no longer require your services. So then he moves back to DFW because he had to spend like a year out in LA. And he starts going back to basically regular writing. Because again, Joe Bob Briggs is a character. John Bloom is a very serious journalist.
Yeah. Like how Angry Video Game Nerd, James Rolfe is like movie maker, video game liker, all that stuff. And then the Angry Video Game Nerd is the character.
It's funny you should mention that. James Rolfe, one of his heroes was Joe Bob Briggs. And I've included in our YouTube page for this episode a really great interview with James Rolfe. It's about a half hour where they're basically talking about that. And John Bloom is in his Joe Bob Briggs persona. So in 2018, the site Shudder, which is associated with
horror.
Yes, yeah, it's basically like a horror site, and it belongs to like IFC. And some of those other entities, they have another, a special bit where they have this site called Shudder. So they brought The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs back, and basically his only thing was, I want to make it just like the old show. We want to have a male girl. We want to do all this. Originally, it was just supposed to be a special. So they did like a 24-hour marathon, and there was this actress who goes by Darcy the male girl. She was a big cosplayer, and she was an actress and big on the horror circuit. She's the one that convinced John Bloom to go ahead and do it because he didn't want to do it anymore. He'd been off the air for like 17 years and he missed it, but he was a serious journalist in that time between there, but he kind of missed it, and Darcy convinced him to do it. So Darcy the male girl is the impetus for this getting back on television. That 24-hour period show that they did, which was streamed live, they crashed Shudder site. They crashed AMC. They crashed IFC, the Amazon link, because everybody wanted to jump on. It was so successful. They're like, okay, we're going to do more specials, and you need to do, we want you to do 10 weeks of programming every year, plus these specials every year, and every week that we do it, we're going to show a double feature because that's what drive-ins do.
Yeah, I remember.
He's been on ever since.
Yeah, we literally went to drive-in not too long ago, a little bit long ago, one actually pretty locally, where we saw the Dark Crystal and the Labyrinth.
Yes, they are bringing drive-ins. Drive-ins are coming back because people like them.
Yeah, and then in the winter they actually converted it to an ice skating rink, which was also cool.
Yeah, it's called the Coyote. It's in downtown Fort Worth. Coyote, if you want to sponsor us, we'd be happy to have you. We talk about it, do shows out there, whatever you want. Give us a ring.
Give me free tickets to something cool.
Yes, we'll work something out. So Bloom's acting persona as Briggs is that of an unapologetic redneck Texan with an avowed love of the drive-in theaters. He specializes in humorous but appreciative reviews of B-movies and cult films, which he calls drive-in movies, as distinguished from indoor bull stuff. In addition to his usual parody of urbane highbrow movie criticisms, his columns characteristically include colorful tales of woman troubles and high-spirited brushes with the law, which inevitably conclude with a rush to catch a movie at the local drive-in, usually with female companionship. Briggs revealed in an interview that he intended the character to have an ambiguous-sounding name, which is where he came up with that Bubba Rodriguez. The reviews typically end with a brief ranting of the movie and questions high points, including the types of action represented by nouns, naming objects used in fight scenes with the word foo. So it's like playing card foo, gun foo, which is where we get the term from. It's actually from him. Chainsaw foo, and he just says it like that. He also lists the number of bodies, the number of female breasts, the notational number of total pints of blood spilled, and appropriately untowed movies as a vomit meter. So his typical summary might read: no dead bodies, 117 breasts, multiple aardvarking. Aardvarking are sex scenes. Lap dancing, cage dancing, convenience store dancing, blindfold aardvarking, blind man aardvarking, lesbo foo, pool cue foo, drive-in Academy Award nominations to Tane McClure. Joe Bob says, check it out.
He almost says it like, you know how you read a headline for like an accident or like it kind of reads like that.
He was a newspaper guy. That's why he did it that way.
That makes sense.
Yeah, he was originally a newspaper. He's at his heart is still a newspaper guy.
Good luck with that.
After a tongue-in-cheek battle with his own convictions, and Joe Bob goes back to the drive-in, he also began reviewing film releases on VHS and DVD. So in the between late 2000 and 2018, this is kind of how he kept the Joe Bob persona going. He also did a local Joe Bob's Trailer Park movies here on one of our local channels for a few years here as well. That's where we saw him mostly. It's basically the same thing on the movie channel or TNT, just toned down a little bit. But originally he did it as a live action stage show, and the movie channel saw it and they're like, okay, we need to do this Joe Bob's Drive-In Theater. It was twice nominated for the Cable Ace Awards, which don't exist anymore.
Rip.
Yeah, and then he went on to Monster Vision for 4 years through kind of late 2000. In the 1990s, Briggs spent 2 seasons as a commentator on Comedy Central's The Daily Show, but he did it under the name John Bloom, with a recurring segment called God Stuff. I've seen those. They're pretty funny. He appeared in a documentary, Herschel Gordon Lewis, Godfather of Gore. And again, in 2018, he went back to The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs. He also appeared in Married with Children. He's written columns as John Bloom for Newsweek, National Lampoon, Rolling Stone, Playboy, The Village Voice, and National Review. He's been up for some Pulitzers for some of his
regular work.
Yeah. Joe Bob Goes to the Drive-In and Joe Bob's America are the syndicated columns he writes for newspapers under the Joe Bob moniker. He does a bunch of stuff for UPI. Under his given name, John Blue, he co-wrote with Jim Atkinson the nonfiction book Evidence of Love, the Candy Montgomery story. The book recounts a 1980 Wiley, Texas murder case in which Montgomery killed her ex-lover's wife, Betty Gore, by striking her 41 times with an axe, and was highly publicized trial ending with an unexpected acquittal. The book was adapted into the CBS TV film A Killing in a Small Town, starring Barbara Hershey, and a HBO Max miniseries Love and Death, starring Elizabeth Olsen.
Wow. Surprise, surprise. We do have some murdery in this Nerdery episode.
There you go. As Joe Bob Briggs, Bloom has published 5 books of satire. Joe Bob Goes to the Drive-In, A Guide to Western Civilization, or My Story. Joe Bob Goes Back to the Drive-In, The Cosmic Wisdom of Joe Bob Briggs, and Iron Joe Bob, his homage to the men's movement and nonfiction books. Profoundly disturbing, shocking movies that changed history, and profoundly erotic, sexy movies that changed history. Again, under this redneck persona, he gives a scholarly treatment to some of these movies so they're not forgotten because he thinks they're culturally relevant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
like how Eraserhead is culturally relevant to like weird fringe movie groups, but if it was a B-rated movie, it would not have its love.
Precisely. If someone didn't champion that film, it would have stayed a B movie. But it got championed because it's so well done. And that's what he points out. He was like, some of these guys, you know, with the money that they had at the time and some of the stuff they did, it's amazing what they were able to accomplish. He also wrote a nonfiction book, Eccentric Orbits, the Iridium Story, in which he traces the conception, development, and launching of the Iridium satellite constellation and the race to save it from destruction. He wrote for Texas Monthly as both a staff writer and a contributor from 1978 to 2006. He is a successful investigative journalist, actor, and author who was born in Dallas, Texas, and raised in Little Rock, Arkansas. He attended Vanderbilt University on a sports writing scholarship. His 9 books include the true crime classics Evidence of Love. Talked about that. He has been a finalist for the National Magazine Award and 3 times was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize by the United Press International. One for his eyewitness coverage of 9/11 because he was in New York at the time. Bloom is best known as his alter ego, Joe Bob Briggs, and his nationally syndicated The Last Drive-In. During the course of his hosting career, Briggs has executive produced 20,000 hours of television and has become the leading authority on exploitative and genre films in 2022. 2 true crime articles he wrote for Texas Monthly were adapted into the HBO miniseries Love and Death.
What I'm hearing is a lot of his writings either end up as films or about films. Yes. Have you noticed that?
Yes. Well, he's such a good and scholarly writer. That's the thing. So here's his UPI, a UPI article from 1986 about the Dallas Times-Herald. This is shortly before it closed because I want to say the Dallas Times-Herald closed in 1989. Also, the Dallas Times-Herald was the best newspaper in DFW until it closed, full stop. It was better than the Star-Telegram. It was better than the Dallas Morning News. And both of those newspapers outlasted it. But the Dallas Times-Herald was just an incredible newspaper. We used to get it when I was a kid. The Sunday Times, Dallas Times-Herald had the best comic strips. It had the best arts and leisure stuff. And when it went under, Fort Worth Star-Telegram and the Dallas Morning News both had to step up their game to fill that void.
When you said good comics, do you mean like Garfield's?
Yes. They ran stuff that nobody else ran, like Bloom County. Nobody else was running Bloom County. Yeah.
I don't know Bloom County.
That's where Opus comes from.
Oh.
Opus the Penguin, yeah, Bloom County. So here's this UPI article from 1986. John Bloom, who gained notoriety at the Dallas Times-Herald as a drive-in movie critic, Joe Bob Briggs, has settled a $300,000 lawsuit with the newspaper over rights to his column, his publicist announced Thursday. Monetary terms of the settlement were not disclosed, but Vicky Bowles, a publicist who represents Bloom, said the writer had been given the rights to the name Joe Bob Briggs and all works produced under the Briggs byline at the Times-Herald. It was shortly after this that that he went on to the movie channel and Joe Bob's Drive-In Theater. Susan Hayward, in an article February 18th, 1985, said from Dallas AP, and it ran in the Times-Herald, by the way, Joe Bob Briggs is the most sexist, bigoted, syndicated drive-in movie critic in America.
He's the only one.
So he's the only one. He's infuriated women, angered Mexican Americans, and been called a racist, a jerk, or worse. The Texas Redneck is also one of the most popular columnists in Dallas, and an estimated 4 million people now read his raunchy reviews in 50 newspapers. Joe Bob Goes to the Drive-In, which has run weekly in the Dallas Times-Herald since January of 1982, was picked up by the Los Angeles Times, syndicated last March. This was from 1985. That was about the time his career sort of took off. He did the movie channel for 10 years. He did Monster Vision for 4 years, which is where most people saw him, because the movie channel show, even though it was a pay site, you never knew when his show was coming on. You know what I mean? Monster Vision was basically on the same time every week, roughly, because it was TNT, it was basic cable. They had to program it like basic cable. Movie channel, his show moved around a lot. So if you had a chance to catch it, it was cool. People would videotape it.
Ah, yes, the ancient art form of capturing film on things.
Yes, the ancient art form of capturing film on things, as opposed to just linking up a Zoom and recording it, which is what we're doing now.
Yeah. Or you go on a torrenting site, but I'm not allowed to talk about that because that's
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what I'm talking about.
What?
Pirating who?
Pirates, they in the Caribbean, right? That's what we're talking about?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely that, yeah.
Okay, all right, good deal. But that's about it for my notes on Joe Bob Briggs, other than check him out. The dude, he does a scholarly treatment on B movies, exploitation cinema.
But he also kind of hides it with that sort of persona he has for it, which
exactly.
is kind of funny.
Yeah, because it is a very scholarly treatment. And he's on Shudder right now. You can even pick it up. If you get the Shudder app, you get everything. If you go through the AMC package on Amazon, which is what we've got, because it's just like an extra couple of bucks a month, you get 85-90% of it. And again, there'll be 20 episodes in a season. That's only 10 weeks, because he does 2 movies in each episode and films it here in Garland, I think. Yeah, I think it's Garland. Anyway, he films it in the DFW area. What's funny is Darcy is from LA, so she comes down for 10 weeks to film all the stuff and then goes home to LA.
I was about to say, why doesn't she stay there? But then again, she probably has stuff in LA to do.
Yeah, she's got stuff in LA to do. But yeah, this is kind of a labor of love for her as well.
Yeah,
and like,
it's just...
here's another thing that'll blow your mind. So the point of the male girl, the bimbo who reads the mail, right? The first one went on to get advanced law degrees. Yeah, it's all a show. It's...
I know it's all a show, but that's literally the storyline to Legally Blonde. Yes. Getting an advanced degree.
Yes.
Despite the abject femininity.
Yes.
Even though femininity does not equal intelligence. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I think that's kind of John Bloom's point. He wants to take all of that and turn it on its ear. Just like the idea of a B movie is a bad movie. No. A B movie is the same as an indie movie. It's just one place in the art house, one place in the drive-in. Or, now repertory shows. Drive-ins now are more family affairs. They're more big budget Hollywood things. There aren't any real repertory drive-in theaters anymore. There's a couple. He talks about them. There's still some X-rated drive-ins in America. There's 2 of them left.
Do you want to go see that one?
No, that would be creepy.
It would be.
But I would like to go to a drive-in. I'd like to see someone program evenings of exploitative cinema. And they do this every year. There's a big drive-in con at this. It's outside of
Drive-in
Pittsburgh.
con. I'm sorry. The idea of people walking around either dressed as a car or a giant projector is really funny to me.
Well, I think they mostly dress as characters of the movie. But yeah, you could. There are people who walk around with like strap-on fake cars.
Nice.
Yeah. And then Joe Bob and Darcy go do that every year, and they have guests. You also want to talk about the horror hosts, which were regional in every region. We had one here. Joe Bob was kind of ours for a while. And then you had the national ones like Elvira, who started out regionally.
Did you hear Elvira actually came out as lesbian recently?
Oh, Cassandra Peters? Oh, yeah.
I think it's funny that her wife, used to call herself Elvira's wife all the time. We still had no idea.
She's Elvira's wife, and no one put 2 and 2 together. People do not equate Elvira with Cassandra Peterson, even though she has publicly said, "I am Elvira. Elvira is me." Just like Joe Bob Briggs and John Bloom, they just can't take the 2 together. Sven Dooley and Dave Coase. Dave Coase. Dave Coase has been playing Sven Dooley since 1979. People can't separate Coase from Sven Dooley.
It's literally like the Batman and Bruce Wayne sort of thing.
Yeah. Now I'm Superman. What, you can't figure it out? Duh. All right, so I think we are about out for this episode. I'd like to say to our Patreons, thank you for staying around for our hiatus. We're going to do some more of these every week, just these little nerdery episodes. K3 is going to program one themselves, so check that out.
Hopefully it's good.
Yeah, and I think that's about it. So
yeah,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
I have been Kim with your internery.
Nice. Cue the music.
That's supposed to be the music. Anyway, should I leave?